Are Are you in the Greater Toronto Area? Do you have some cash that's burning a hole in your pocket right now? Don't waste your time dealing with those expensive Bitcoin ATMs and take your cash on down to Louis B. With 5 locations to serve you across the GTA, Louis B makes it easy to trade cash for crypto. Check them out at louisbtc.com or give them a call at 647-866-6969 and get started today. Located at 279 Spadina Avenue, it's in the heart of Toronto's Chinatown. Other locations are in Scarborough, Mississauga, and 2 in Richmond Hill. That's louisbtc.com, LOUIIBTC.com, and start your Bitcoin journey today with the Bitcoin Bay and Louis B.
How come I can't make Garv co-host?
I think I should be. No, I actually don't see people.
Okay. I'm making you co-host so you can also let people in.
I'm good now. Yeah.
Microfreeze ID is co-host. Jerry's co-host.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in our special presentation today related to crypto and taxes. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying the weather outside from wherever you are. We're just doing like a little bit of a like letting people in right now, and we're just gonna use that time to just like get yourself comfortable, maybe grab a drink or a snack. Presentation will start around approximately 6:30. That's our aim. And then it will run. Before that, we'll do some community announcements, get into a bit of a discussion of what Bitcoin Bay does. So it'll probably be strapped in for a good hour and a half at least. And we'll try to take maybe a mini break in between. But yeah, use this time to grab any drink or snack. Maybe you're just getting off work, so just use the time to relax a little bit. And we'll get started shortly soon. We also have an active chat room where people talk about whether it's their first time to a Bitcoin Bay meetup. Since we have an online presence now, we also like to ask where people are joining in from. Majority of the time we do have our audience from the US and Canada, but anywhere else in any part of the world that you might be joining from, just give us a shout in the chat. Let us know where you're from. Any topics you're interested in like discussing with others, put in the chat. It's a pretty active chat group. So even if one of myself, Leo, or whoever, Mike, Jerry, they'll try to answer your questions as best, but we've got a great community of experts who should be able to answer any of the topics or questions you may have. So please do use the chat for that purpose.
Hey, Michael, quick thing. Can you share the YouTube channel email URL so that people that can share it with their friends that can't be on the call, at least they can watch it on YouTube?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you.
Done and done.
Hey, Leo, if you're okay with it, maybe we can start with maybe some community announcements.
Yeah, that's fine. The sooner we can get everything
yeah.
going, better.
So if we usually start our community announcements around 6:10, but I think we've got a good amount of people joining us right now. So if you're new, if you've got a community announcement, any project you're working on within the space related to any topic within blockchain and crypto, we encourage you to use this time to talk about it or what you're working on. So feel free to go for it. Raise your hand in the Zoom so it's easier for us to pick you and you can use that time to make your announcement.
I guess nobody has anything to announce yet.
You could even use this time to talk about you being new to your first Bitcoin meetup. We always like to welcome new faces, and it's a safe space. So any question or any thing you just want to say or ask, feel free to go for it.
I think actually today might be Ralph's birthday. For those in Toronto that know Ralph, Ralph is a character in the crypto blockchain space in Toronto.
Actually, the next meeting I registered for the 19th. That's my birthday.
Okay, so I thought it was today. Okay, there you go. Well,
that's okay. I can wait a couple more days to reach 77.
Okay, good. Well, then everybody, there's Ralph. His birthday's coming up. So,
I'm making some money in another company for which I have to set up a company. So I will have a tax question. When we're making money on crypto personally, can you run that through that company? Because companies have a 19% tax and individuals like me probably have 46% tax.
yeah, we will go into the best practices because actually, it was supposed to be, the panel was supposed to be two. It was Kirk, who basically is based out of the US. And we had a Canadian crypto tax person who was supposed to join us to balance it out. But what's happening is that the last minute, the Canadian one couldn't join. So we will basically try to be as general as possible. But the thing is that for most jurisdictions, they kind of follow each other to an extent. So we will talk about what the best practices are. We won't go too much into detail. If you're Canadian, maybe if you're US, yes, because Kirk can actually get more into detail on that. But in Canada, we will try to keep it as general as possible until I will actually, once I will get the permission of the Canadian tax specialist that I have to basically refer Canadian questions to him.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to have to leave at 7 simply because that crypto, the other one that you all know with Dennis, they used to be on Tuesdays and he's moved it over to Mondays for some reason. So
he wants to grow his space just as much. He's doing the same thing we're doing, so it's okay.
Yeah,
there's enough for everybody.
Oh, there is. I haven't talked to him for a long time. That's why I want to get on his at 7.
Okay, sounds good. Just to answer your questions and maybe everyone's question, just for the sake of your own convenience, this video, and this is also a disclaimer, I can use this time to say that this video will be recorded. It's being live streamed on YouTube. It will also be recorded and published after. So just a heads up for everyone, if you're not able to watch the whole presentation, it will be on our media channel. So keep an eye out for it. Any other questions or anything you miss will be on there. So just giving you guys a heads up.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we can, yeah, I guess, go into everything about Bitcoin Bay, then we can do a Bitcoin Bay specific announcements during that process as well.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin Bay right now. So just give me a heads up here. A little bit about Bitcoin Bay. So we are building the world's blockchain ecosystem starting here in Toronto. We've been at it since early 2014. A lot of us have seen the space grow from the earliest days of knowing what Bitcoin was, then growing into Ethereum, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of stuff that was happening in the space was happening here in Toronto. And we want to continue to drive that mission from starting from here in Toronto and continue all over the world. We know what the potential of the tech is, and we want to be part of it. Bitcoin Bay is where your blockchain journey begins. Welcome to the largest and longest running blockchain community and blockchain consultancy. Like I mentioned before, we want to grow the ecosystem globally. So if you're a person in the space, you're looking to get an idea out there, come talk to us. We might know the right people to get you in touch with to help your project or idea grow, because we want the technology and anything that surrounds it to be to touch all endpoints. And we love Canada. So we started here in Toronto and we love all of Canada. So we want everyone in Canada to benefit from here, but we also want to continue that around the world. As I mentioned previously before, this video is being live streamed right now, but it's also being recorded to be put on YouTube after. We do have multiple social media channels such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. So give us a follow there. We are also very active in our WhatsApp channels, Telegram, Signal. So if you want to join any of those channels, use the chat now to reach out to any of us. We will get you in touch and we will add you to those chats. We are in partnership with Louis B, an independent crypto Bitcoin exchange located here in the heart of downtown Toronto. She is an OTC, Bitcoin exchange desk. Her main location is 279 Spadina Avenue, Toronto, Ontario. She can do a face-to-face Bitcoin transaction with you, provided with cash. If there's any other means of you wanting to, maybe some other sort of crypto, this can be ideally discussed with her. Her contact information is there. I think her number is directly there. So if you're looking to give her a shout, do that there. However, we understand there may be other people from outside of the city of Toronto, other parts of Canada, and around the world. So if you are looking to do an OTC transaction within your region of where you live, also put that in the chat. We can find you the right people. We just need to know where you're coming from, and we'll get you in touch with those people. But for today's meetup and all of our previous meetups and going forward, Louis B is a great OTC exchange that we support and love in downtown Toronto. How does Bitcoin Bay help? So like I've mentioned before, if you've got an idea, you've got a project, we can help you out in that regard. We've helped companies do lots of product development in the past. So if you've got a product idea, reach out to us and we can help you out with that. We've also worked on building decentralized applications. We've helped clients with their specific cryptocurrencies trading strategy, ideation assessment, investor relations. We've got great relationships with investors around the world. So if you've got a project or an idea in your region, once again, and you're looking to connect with an investor to take that project to the next level, reach out to us. We may know the right people for you. We've also helped out local businesses to increase merchant adoption of cryptocurrency. So that's another way we help out. And the list continues. So if you've got something you want to ask us about related to your project or idea or getting into the space, shoot us an email at info@bitcoinbay.ca, and we will get back to your response right away. And if we don't get back to it right away, we will follow up with you. Just shoot us another email. Myself, my name is Gorav. I'm part of the Bitcoin Bay team here in Toronto, but also got Leo, who you guys have probably heard from, Jerry, another co-founder in the space, of the Bitcoin Bay team, Antoine, and Alwyn, who are all part of the Bitcoin Bay team here. I just put this general slide in. I could give another round for another, maybe someone else has a community announcement who might have joined after. But if you've got another community announcement, please use this time to raise your hand and I will pick you and you can make your announcement. I think I've got a question from Vanessa. So I'm just gonna lower your hand, and then I've got Wade. So if Vanessa, could you unmute yourself and you can go for your question, or sorry, your announcement.
Yeah, my question actually put it in the chat. It was about I'm considering starting a business focusing specifically on crypto custody, and I was wondering if you guys know if such business already exists in Toronto, and eventually um, connect me with that business and see how I can thrive from there.
So why don't, if there's someone, Leo, if you want to take that, but I would just suggest,
so
go
let's
for it.
we'll go offline on that. So shoot us an email. We know 1 or 2 projects that are dabbling, and they've been dabbling for most of the year, 2 years in custody solutions, mainly for institutions. Last I checked, anyways, and they're based out of Toronto. So specifically, yeah. So yeah, just shoot myself, Leo at bitcoinbay.ca, and ccinfo@bitcoinbay.ca, then we can actually start the
Awesome.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next person is Wade. Gonna lower your hand and you can unmute yourself and go for your announcement.
Yeah, all done. Thanks a lot. I just want to let everybody know I did a Udemy course last year, quite frankly, and I've been giving out free courses every month, and they always get taken up. So obviously you guys are liking them. So I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to be doing it again today. I'll put it in the chat here, and I'll also put it on the WhatsApp group and on the Bitcoin Bay Meetup site as well. So this way there'll be links will be there. I'll put it in English, Spanish, and French because we have all 3 languages represented. So I'll put them out here shortly.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for that, Wade. I do not see. Oh, yeah.
Jared, do you want to make any announcements or?
I mean, I could, but you're free to talk about it.
No, you talk about it. That's what I
Alright,
called on you.
All right, fine. Yeah, Bitcoin Bay, we're organizing a hackathon block hack coming up May 3rd to the 9th. So that'll be a Monday to a Sunday. The hacking will be from the Monday to Friday, the May 7th. We're planning out a mini 1-day conference online through Zoom. So you guys basically already know the procedure of how to get on. We'll be releasing more details about it maybe later on this week, maybe early next week. So keep your ears out on that one. And we're also going to be doing a BitAngels investment startup pitch event on May the 13th, which is going to feature some of the top placing teams and projects from the Block Hack Hackathon. And hopefully we can get these projects more continual funding so that they can keep developing and working on their products. And that's a wrap for me.
Thank you, Jerry, for that insightful information. Just coming back to the points of what we were talking about before, if you've got a project or an idea, you could present it at the hackathon and you never know where it could go to the next step. You could get in front of the right investor at BitAngels and then really take it really far. So the opportunities are endless and your journey begins right here at Bitcoin Bay. So we've got an interesting meetup 2 weeks from now, and I'd like to use this time to make that announcement. We've got a special guest, Anthony Diorio, who's one of the founder of Decentral and Jack's Wallet and one of the co-founders of Ethereum. He's going to be here for a fireside chat in 2 weeks on Monday, April 19th. And you can for sure register now, RSVP on meetup.com. and use this opportunity to find out what like the early days of crypto was like in Toronto, early days of Ethereum. He's got a lot of insight and experience within the space, and he's a great guest to have on our meetup. So I would really recommend everyone signing up for that meetup and definitely attending. It's really hard to get a hold of him, so I would definitely recommend coming out to that event. And without further ado, I'm gonna have now the current guest of honor take it away with his presentation for Crypto and Taxes, Kirk Phillips. And I will let Leo and him get into that. So I'm just gonna stop my screen share here so you guys can take over, if that's cool with you guys.
Yes, it is. All right, so I'm just gonna give a quick intro about Kirk, and Kirk will just go in and talk a bit about himself. And again, basically, the panel was supposed to be about 2 people, one from Canada, one from the US, and basically give it a holistic approach. But we're going to try to keep it to best practices. Now, if you're in the US, you can ask some specific questions, but the discussion is that usually tax jurisdictions handle things similarly. So best practice, what anybody that has crypto should be doing in the first place anyways. We'll keep that the conversation that way. If you have your questions, we'll have some Q&A for you to actually ask Kirk the questions. So just a quick thing is, I met Kirk actually through the Bit Angels program, and Kirk is actually the city leader for Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And I met him and I reached out to him, and we had this actually slated for a while, and I reached out to a few people. Kirk was gracious enough to say yes, and I thank him for being here. And Kirk is actually an author, and I'm trying to get his information here. An author, a founder. He's the founder of Crypto Block and he's the managing director of Global Crypto Advisories. And basically, from reading up on him, he helps businesses understand crypto and understand how to use blockchain or crypto, period. So he is a well-rounded individual that understands the space. He's not a newbie into the space, I'll tell you that, because he did the C4, all of us did the CBP, the C4 CBP, and we all know how hard it was. And actually, story about that is that was started in Toronto, so everybody knows. So that's a little plug in for the guys at C4. We started in Toronto. So
and
again,
they're out of here now.
Oh,
Story
yeah.
of Toronto.
Yes, story of Canada. Tech companies start in Canada and then they grow and then they leave. But again, we're trying to keep that that going. So Kirk, take it and just let the people know a bit more about yourself, and then we can get further into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Leo. I really appreciate that. So, you know, I just want to start off with, by the way, we're just going to kind of improvise here. As I said, the structures changed, you know, as you mentioned, and also don't have a slide deck. So I like, you know, I like being dynamic and spontaneous and stuff like that. Sometimes you get a better talk out of it. So one of the things I always talk about my talk with, start a talk with, I'm going to go ahead and say that here, because I saw that somebody put in a chat here. They made a comment about, let's see. Somebody made a comment about, hey, I know a guy that fell victim to a Bitcoin scam. Any particular scams to watch out for, so on and so forth. All right. So anyway, there's a famous quote by Walter Wriston, former Citigroup chairman and CEO, and this is from the 90s, I believe it is, but this famous statement is, information about money has become almost more important than money itself. So I don't know if anybody recognizes that quote, but I think it's a good one. So again, information about money has become almost more important than money itself. So we're talking about several decades ago, right? Roll the clock forward. Here we are in crypto. We know what this technology is, you know, how it's transforming and what the trajectory is of that. What I like to say is, just take that and just change it up a little bit. What I like to say is crypto information is more valuable than crypto itself. Right. So the way he said it was, money has become almost more important, what I like to say is crypto information, it is more valuable. And some of those things are probably self-evident to those of you who have been in crypto, either, just getting into it or been into it for a while. As we know, monetary sovereignty, controlling your own keys. If you don't manage all that right, you can lose your assets and that stuff, right? That's one of the most obvious things, but it goes even much, much deeper than that. So that's why education is so important. And that's why, being part of a BitBuy and these great meetups like this, I can see you guys seems like have a tremendous value proposition here with all your connections. And I'm glad to be on the meetup and hope to be back again as well here. So the reason I wanted to start off with that segue, even though I usually do that anyway, is because, again, when you're talking about these scams and stuff like that, just that one thing alone is super critical to be self-educated in the space. And not only, just to continue to educate yourself really on a daily basis. And so, even the most, I guess, prudent and diligent and, even the veterans in the space, whether it's crypto or otherwise, can still be taken for a ride. So again, the more educated you are, the more likely you are to spot a scam. For a number of reasons, whether that's just having connections like this where about projects, somebody talks about a project on a meetup like this, then that there's some legitimacy to it, and so on and so forth, right? So again, and of course, where else crypto information is valuable is, of course, when we want to talk about taxes, which is the topic of tonight. So it just so happens I'm also a certified fraud examiner, and although I don't don't investigate frauds per se, use it more for prevention, because that's where the lowest cost is when it comes to frauds. If you get into investigation, you've lost out, and you might as well forget it, because the chances of being made whole are probably pretty slim. So better to be focused on the prevention part of the curve. And so anyway, so again, being well educated and well versed when it comes to taxes is a very important thing. And so a couple things I wanted to talk about here is, one of the recent white papers I put together is one that's called Avoid 7 Costly Crypto Tax Pitfalls. I wanted to talk about that. And also it's interesting, again, how we changed the format. We have some, one of the other speakers couldn't make it, but what I found is that actually best practices around crypto accounting and taxation actually, has a lot to do with, or what I should say is, a lot of that is not necessarily related to your tax jurisdiction and so on and so forth. So whatever the taxing regime is. So what I mean by that is, let's just say 90% of the game is jurisdictionally agnostic, if you will, meaning that the way you approach it is going to be the same, and it's just the tail end piece as to when you calculate numbers and what tax rates you apply to it and things of that nature, right? So that's why we can all extract some value out of this talk here, regardless of whether you're from U.S., Canada, or some other place like that. So, and then Leo mentioned one of the things was talking about how do you look to work with an advisor and a professional in the space. I can tell you that certainly in the early days, we were one of just a handful of people. As a matter of fact, there was only 2 or 3 crypto tax software websites, and we were on those websites. There's only like 2 or 3 people who were doing this stuff in the beginning, and so we were on those websites. Of course, now there's several dozen types of software, and now there's dozens, if not hundreds, of accountants / CPAs, or I believe certified accountants, CAs, I guess, in Canada and other parts of the world, right? It's equivalent, essentially the same thing, right? CPA, CA. But now there's a whole lot of people in the game. And why is that? Well, that's because it's like anything, any business that you're in, you're looking to, increase revenue and figure out how you can monetize better. So when, if you've been strumming along with the same thing for years, all of a sudden you find out about this crypto tax, it's getting hot, getting traction. Everybody needs tax, whether you're an individual or a business. So of course, a lot of people are going to jump into the game and hang a shingle and say, hey, I do crypto taxes now. There's a software there, and all of a sudden you just add that to your service offering and there you go. So there's a lot of people out there offering that up. But when it really comes down to it, what we found is that there's still a lot of folks who are making inquiries because their current CPA or current firm doesn't know anything about crypto at all. So literally talk about, again, education. Once again, it shows up again. Now, as you know, many professionals, including CPAs and CAs, are required to do a certain number of hours every year, same as doctors and other professions like that. Like you're required to do continuing education. But yet, even with that being said, there's still a group of folks who are not, savvy and haven't got themselves up to speed and literally don't know anything, can't even talk the talk at all, no talk. And so that really turns off clients when you can't talk the talk, especially with crypto. There's a certain, kind of camaraderie, if you will. There's like people want to know that you know what's going on. If you don't know what's going on at all, it's like, it's kind of like, oh, I'd rather find somebody else new, even if they've been great so far and have helped you out in other areas. A lot of people just, they really want to work with somebody who can talk the talk. So, and again, there's a lot of people out there saying they can do this stuff. And, one of the things I want to talk about here a little bit later is, crypto tax software is not a magic wand. If we had a startup at one of these projects, a lot of the marketing is, import your stuff and calculate your crypto taxes in 10 minutes. Of course, we would do the same marketing campaign, if that was us. But I can tell you, it's a lot more complicated than that. Now, is there a case where that could be done? I'm sure it is, but it's going to be more in the rare scenario, where a handful of cases it's like that. But it's more likely to be much, much more complicated than that for a number of reasons. So just because of the fact that you got a lot of software choices out there, an accountant can claim that they can, provide this service, and they really don't know anything about it. So of course, one question would be, do you hold any Bitcoin, or do you hold any ETH, or do you hold any crypto at all? And if they say no, that's your first question right there. If they're not using it at all, you gotta be in the game to some degree. And to me, this is whether you're catering to individuals for taxes or you're doing business consulting, any of it really. I don't know how you can claim you're in the blockchain space, if you're not, and you're an expert, or you want to do this advising if you're not in the game to some degree. So you could ask that due diligence question right there. See if you can catch them like a deer in headlights. Somebody's profiles would certainly indicate whether they've, are connected to the space, whether it's having given talks or any number of things like that. So, you just got to really figure out, who's been out there, who's in the space. And if you're crypto savvy and you talk to somebody, you're going to know anyway. If you have a consultation, you get into a conversation, that's going to be your best due diligence test right there. You'll know right away whether they know what they're talking about or not. So, the more complicated the situation is, the more likely that you need to be working with somebody who's probably the best person you could possibly get. If you got a more simple situation, then maybe it's not so important. But the more you have going on, the more important it would be to work with somebody that really understands the space very, very well, and all the intricacies and nuances. So with that being said, let me just move on. I want to talk about these avoiding the 7 costly crypto tax pitfalls, which there's many more than that, by the way, but we just picked up 7 of these. Okay, so and a lot of these will help answer some questions and considerations along the way. So number 1 is paying higher tax from poor organization. And that's basically poor organization results in wheel spinning and wasted time and energy. And this is really true with anything, right? If you're not well organized, it's going to cost you. And in crypto, and especially with taxes, is going to cost you even more. So a lot of the times, unfortunately, the crypto tax exercise is a post facto, after the fact exercise. And it's also a wild card in the sense that, to some degree, somebody might, a taxpayer may know, okay, well, I know I earned this much at a job, or I know my business had this much revenue, and then my expenses are like this, and I know this year was the same as last year. And you can kind of do some error accounting and know that, kind of where you might land, at least, income-wise, taxable income-wise. When it comes to crypto, it's more of a wild card, like a roulette wheel. So you may not, and some people have some idea, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. But until you actually find that out, that's the wild card, because could come out to be a really high gain, or it could come out to be a small gain, could come out to be a loss. But a lot of times you're figuring this out like kind of way after the fact, when you should really, the idea is to really be organized enough that you're getting this information in real time, so you know exactly where you're at. So if you know you have unrealized gains, then you could know that if you sold it, your gain is likely going to be X. Or if you have you've already sold and you've already taken profits, like right now, right? We're in a bull run. So if you're taking profits right now, if you are organized and you have up-to-date information, then you're going to want to look to potentially take losses at some point to offset the gains, right? So I'm just telling you that, not being organized, which comes in a number of ways, from actually poorly named files and so on and so forth, that can cost you tax-wise. That's probably more of a more subtle one, but it's certainly important nonetheless. The next one is one of the biggies that I've never heard anybody talk about before, which is what I call the fictitious gains dilemma. And this is a scenario that I don't even know exists in the traditional markets or traditional fiat world, traditional finance or whatever. I've never seen it before. I've never even heard anybody talk about this before. But it's a scenario where you can end up essentially making a purchase for crypto and having a taxable event. You say, well, how's that possible? It shouldn't be possible at all. You should only have a taxable event, in a jurisdiction where you have a sale that's subject to tax. How can you buy something and have that trigger tax? Well, the way that happens is, I don't want to get too much into the weeds in this one, but basically what this stems from is using Bitcoin or ETH as a conduit. Okay, so there's not an infinite number of trading pairs out there, right? And even though there's more and more trading pairs, there's more ways to trade, there's more platforms, we got stable coins now, we got all that stuff. Surprisingly, you still have these scenarios where you need to make a hop from, coin A to coin B, and the only way you can make that hop is by making a hop in the middle with Bitcoin or ETH first. So you might have to go buy Bitcoin, and then go sell that Bitcoin to buy the other coin, to buy Zen or whatever it is, or use it with ETH. So it's a conduit. You got that middle hop in the middle where you're buying another coin, or you might have an existing coin. Same scenario will happen, but you're making that hop in the middle that basically can trigger a gain. Can trigger a transaction and create a capital gain, especially when you're using a FIFO method, which is a first in, first out, where you would have, let's say, zero basis capital gains, meaning you've hodled Bitcoin, say, since 2013, essentially for zero with a zero basis. Okay, that means it's all gain built in. If you sell it today, it's almost all gain. So if you do this hop conduit scenario where I'm talking about, what this method would do is that it would look to go back to the oldest coin you have and sell that. Okay, even though economically all you did was buy it and sell it in time zero to go buy Zencash today, or whatever other coin it is that you're trying to buy. But by this quirky method, what it does is it looks to go back and sell a coin, but it doesn't match the economics of the situation. You see what I'm saying? So that's why understand it. So actually, that's another one I'm going to talk about. It's cost basis. But again, this is something that's super subtle. I'm using an extreme example where you have zero basis Bitcoin, where literally you could create this gigantic gain, but it probably happens on a more subtle level, and people don't know that they've actually overpaid their taxes from this fictitious gains dilemma phenomenon. And again, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I remember making a trade on Kraken, and I was thinking, well, once you're in stable coins, you should certainly be able to go from any stable coin to any stable coin. And I forget which one it was. It might have been like Trust USD trying to go to USDC. It was two of the coins, but basically needed to. I should have actually made a note about what the hop was for case study purposes. But basically, there wasn't a trading pair to get whatever coin I wanted to buy on Kraken, so we actually had to sell. I'm just going to make this up to illustrate, but I think it was like selling Trust USD for ETH, and they had to sell ETH for USDT, and then use that to buy whatever the coin was. It's crazy. I thought you could just go to stablecoin to stablecoin. That was kind of the point of stablecoins. So I'm just trying to illustrate that what happens is you don't have every possible trading pair here, and because you got to make all these hops in the middle, you can get tripped up with one of these fictitious gains, situations. Sorry, I think I hit myself on mute there.
Yes, you
So
did.
All right. So another one is pitfall number 3 is cost basis double dipping. Okay. And so again, this is everything else being considered the same when it comes to cost basis method. And again, I'm talking about the US, but I'm sure this is, any other jurisdiction where you've got cost basis. I'm confident this is going to apply. So regardless of what cost basis method you can choose, everything else being equal with your crypto taxes, the one that you can select is going to have the greatest outcome on what your final tax calculation is. However, the thing is that we need to keep in mind is to be reasonable and consistent in everything you do. Always remember that when you're navigating stormy seas, when you're navigating a gray area, when it's not clear, which is what this is basically in every jurisdiction around the world, because PwC did a tax study at the end of last year where they analyzed the clarity on the crypto tax compliance, and it wasn't even the quality of it. It was just like how much was out there, and it was pretty telling how, for the most part around the world, there's still a lack of guidance in almost every country, at least that was in that study, right? So, when it comes to cost basis, or just when it comes to navigating crypto, when you don't have clarity, again, be reasonable and consistent. So that also applies to cost basis method. So you can't, for example, use your software, pick in 2017, you picked LIFO because that produced the lowest tax. 2018, pick FIFO because that produced the lowest tax. 2019, pick average cost because that produced the lowest tax. And then pick some specific identification method in 2020 because that one produced the lowest tax. You got to pick the one in the beginning, and the one that you pick, you got to stay with that one essentially, going forward. Now there are ways to change, but that's a whole nother issue entirely. So you can't, because otherwise, if you just chose whatever method that worked best for you from year to year, you're going to end up double dipping. Okay. And then it's not going to be reasonable and consistent. Okay. So I'm pretty sure that's going to apply, that principle is going to apply, no matter where you live. All right. So moving on, pitfall number 4 is the missing transactions dilemma. And this is a really big one here. So troubleshooting. All right. So when you have missing crypto data, how do you fill in the holes? How do you plug the holes in the picture? You got missing puzzle pieces, right? You got a 1,000-piece puzzle at a yard sale or a garage sale, and you got 138 pieces are missing. How you gonna fill in those holes with the missing pieces and try to get something that's accurate and complete? How do you go about doing that? And again, this if you're new into crypto or haven't used that many platforms, this might seem like, what's he talking about? But I'm telling you, what I've seen is that it's rather common that most people have missing transactions to some degree or another. Matter of fact, we just had a call earlier. Guy goes back to 2017, hasn't handled any crypto transactions yet, any of the years. So he's got to handle 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And he's also used about 10 different exchanges plus various wallets. And some of these exchanges have either closed down for US customers, or, they had a mysterious hack, or they went bankrupt, or, whatever the case was like that, and they're no longer around. So here's the thing people don't realize is everybody thinks about, when you don't have good security practices, you can lose your assets. Everybody talks about that, right? Not your keys, not your coins, and monetary sovereignty and all that good stuff. But here's the other thing nobody thinks about or mentions is that data is also an asset. Okay. So you can lose your crypto assets from a wallet or from an exchange. All right. But the data about the transactions is also an asset. So if an exchange goes defunct and you no longer have access, if you were unfortunately lost some crypto assets because you held them on the exchange, well, guess what? If you didn't download your transactions, you've lost your data. That data is also an asset, and it can impact you when it comes to taxes, because now you got holes in the picture. And it's like, how do I troubleshoot that? How do I go about trying to figure out how to manage this? Now, if it's only a few of them and it's more immaterial to your overall situation, you could be in good shape. But in some cases, it could be, perhaps it's an exchange where you had the larger trades, where you had the more frequent trades. It's the larger number of transactions. Now those are missing. You know, how you going to deal with that? How you going to deal with that? So there are ways to forensically kind of patch those holes, you know. So for example, let's just use an example where you had, let's just say, a Jax wallet, right? So you had a Jax wallet and you always sent some Bitcoin from one of your exchanges and you sent it over to the Jax wallet. And from that Jax wallet, what you did is you either tipped people or you bought computer equipment with Tiger Direct, okay? Or you bought some stuff on Overstock. That's all you ever used the Jax wallet for, okay? You only sent Bitcoin there. You only bought Overstock stuff. You only bought Tiger Direct stuff, and you tipped some people. That's it. So Bitcoin went in the Jax and you spent it all, okay? And there was always a de minimis balance in Jax, or even, let's say, a zero balance, okay? Now you lose the Jax wallet. You forgot to back it up. Computer crashes, browser blows up. You can't restore that wallet, all right? But what you do know is, you say, I know that I always sent the transactions from whatever exchange it was, you know that you transferred those over to the wallet, and whether it's an address or a memo or something else, you can identify that, no, I know that these transactions were transfers, sends over to my Jax wallet. So I've lost all my Jax data. Normally that would be a transfer, okay? Technically speaking, that would be a transfer, okay? But in this case, you can't make it a transfer because you got missing data. So you got to kind of be, you got to be more dynamic and fluid here and change it up. So what you would need to do is just say, you know what? I know that's because all the Bitcoin I sent into Jax I spent, I'm just going to code the transfers into Jax as spends, okay? Now it's may not be completely accurate because of the date and so on and so forth of the, when the Bitcoin is actually spent from the Jax wallet. However, it's going to be as close as possible. So again, the transfers going into Jax, you would just record those as a spend, right? And that will trigger your gain calculation or loss calculation on those Bitcoin transactions. That's one way to do it there. Okay, so there are some ways where you can kind of narrow it down, and there's other ways where, again, it could be more complicated and you got to figure out how do we go about doing this. It could be estimates, making a reasonable estimate. If you have missing data and you can't figure out you spend wheels and you can't really identify, which best way to solve it, you can make estimates, but again, cover your ass and document. Make sure that you make a memo and make this, again, reasonable and consistent. Now, if you feel like you want to go conservative and you're like, I really don't have the information, I'm not comfortable with making an estimate. Well, you could go conservative, and what conservative means is, well, let's say you're calculating 100% gains in some scenario where you have missing data. That's conservative, right? It still could be reasonable to estimate, just because you're estimating and making a memo doesn't mean that the weight is necessarily any different than if you had the transactions, okay? And again, when I say reasonable and consistent, it's also doing things in good faith. If you're doing it in good faith, reasonable and consistent, those are your golden nugget takeaways right there, right? So, and again, troubleshooting is a big one. That a lot of the software is going to have, when you put your transactions in there and you calculate, what's one of the most common things that you'll have negative balance errors or red flags or negative warnings, and it depends on the terminology and the platform that you're using. But when you have that, then you know that there's an issue and you need to go troubleshoot. But here's the thing is, if you go calculate and you have no warnings, that doesn't mean like, oh, sweet, I have no errors and everything's perfect. So you can still have stuff that's hidden that you don't know about. So if you get a warning from one of the tax softwares, then it's just it's telling you where you might need to go dig and look further. But again, what I'm saying is, it's also possible that you got mistakes and you got holes in the information. It just doesn't trigger anything to tell you to go looking for it. Okay. So you can have stuff hidden even when you don't have error messages produced. All right. So let's see. Yep. So another pitfall is, oh, well, let me just go back. This ties into what I was just talking about, but I said this earlier, but software is not a magic wand. All right. So we actually just produced an on-demand course that's called the Crypto Tax Blueprint that helps people follow best practices around some of the stuff that we're talking about, right? So what we realized in producing that course is that not only is 90% of best practices essentially, tax agnostic, but the software is a less important part of the overall. Some people might want to argue against me on that one, but I can tell you that in this course that I'm talking about, we created 10 modules, right? Only one of the modules has to do with choosing crypto tax software. And then, by the way, choosing crypto tax software, that could almost be a whole course unto itself. All right, because once you commit to that, you've now could commit years to it to come to find out that based on your trading behavior and whether you're using DeFi or not, if you can end up, running into a brick wall, you're like, oh, now I need to migrate. I should have used this other software. That was actually better for me. Okay. So, but again, software is not a magic wand. And again, that's like, that was just one module of 10 that we had. So there's a whole lot more to, managing best practices. All right, so failure to document. We already talked about that to some degree, right? I'm talking about covering your ass. If you need to be, act in good faith, be reasonable and consistent. But whenever you are troubleshooting missing transactions and stuff like that, whenever you are making an estimate or anything of that nature, just make a memo and document it, whether it's in, whether it's in Word or it's in Excel. And another thing is actually creating a tracker. Even though you've got the tax software where you are putting your transactions into there, you still actually need an interface to essentially track your progress with the software. Like I said, if you're using Coinbase, some of this stuff might not be like, what's he talking about? Why would I need to track anything? I got Coinbase, I got another one. I'll plug it into the software, like I'm good to go. Well, like I said, using the example of the consultation we had earlier today, the guy had at least 10 different exchanges plus several wallets and some other stuff. So when that's the case, you need to archive. First of all, you should actually be exporting all the transactions from the platforms as well. Like basically, if you can do an API with Coinbase, you can do an API with Kraken. You never have to touch the transactions, so to speak, to get the transactions into the SAC software. Coinbase and Kraken are not storage devices for your primary, data. That's what same with people do this with bank accounts. People do this with credit card accounts. The online bank account is not a storage device, for your bank statements and your credit card statements. The same thing with these crypto platforms. So even if Coinbase has the API, you should still download every single report out of there, each one of the exchanges, archive it, raw file backup, best practices that way. Because the exchange goes down, like I said, the exchange goes down, data is an asset, now your data is gone. Now you might have to pay somebody more to try to patch the holes. When you're done patching the holes, you might pay more tax than you otherwise would have, right? So you got that whole thing to deal with there. So again, whether or not you need to massage the data or not to get it in, or it comes in automatically, all that's one thing, it's universal CSV downloads, archive all that stuff into a perm file, whether you're using Dropbox or a hard drive or whatever it is. You should have your own documentation of that, because as we know, platforms do go defunct. Exchanges disappear. So document along the way. And like as you are importing stuff, you may need to track it as well, because once you get stuff caught up to speed, if you have to do manual type imports of transactions, it would be best to really do it on a quarterly basis, or it could be monthly or whatever. It depends on what makes sense, what's practical, right? But if you're doing it quarterly, you want to track it. That's why I'm talking about using an Excel sheet. Track, did I archive the file from 2017 from Kraken? Do I have that backed up? Check that off. Have I uploaded the current year's quarter from the first quarter of 2021 yet? Yes, check that off. Because if you don't, what you can have is duplicate transactions and all that other kind of stuff. So you really got to track your progress at like every hop of the way. All right. So, and another thing is that, I'm sure that many of you are probably familiar by now, whether you're in Canada or not, because this has been news in the crypto space for many years now. But we had the famous Coinbase summons of a couple of years back, right? Went through the courts. Was actually actually met in the middle. Instead of getting the whole list, it was all right. Let's get customers of the $20,000 worth of transactions. Well, guess what? I figured that this was coming down the pike. Sure enough, last week another announcement. Same thing again with Poloniex and Circle. Customers with transactions between 2016 and 2020. Again, $20,000 in activity, same as the Coinbase. And there actually might have been another summons as well. Forget what that one was. I didn't get a chance to go back to the email yet. So now this is IRS, of course, but I just think with increased scrutiny around crypto transactions, I wouldn't be surprised if this is not happening with other jurisdictions, around the world. So, IRS is, some of the best customers of Chainalysis and CipherTrace are law enforcement and other agencies, be it the IRS taxing agencies or law enforcement agencies. They're some of the best customers for these guys. They're using this, using these tools to be able to like try to trace out transactions and figure out where people may have not reported and stuff like that. So again, that's why going back to making sure you cover your ass along the way is super important, to have a really good CYA file. So those are just a few pitfalls right there, but we actually identified at least in the course I was talking about, we've identified at least 37 crypto tax pitfalls plus another 40 or 50 key takeaways. So when I talk about, best practices here with crypto taxes and managing your accounting and crypto transactions, this is no joke. There's definitely a process to it. So again, make sure you back up all of the raw files. And again, even after you get the transactions into a crypto tax software, that software could close up shop. So after you get the transactions in the software, I would even download those transactions by year and archive those in your backup file, because at least if you had to migrate to another platform, what it does is it normalizes all the data into the same format, whether it was like Coin Tracker, or a Coinly or whatever platform it is. When you export it, it's all going to be in the same format. If you had 10 exchanges in there, the export from that crypto tax software will all be in the same format. So let's see here. So let me just, I'm going to go down again and just kind of tell you what would be like, this is just a real bullet points of like 10 steps related to like the 10 modules I was referring to. And again, some overlap with pitfalls, but just want to just do this again to add some redundancy to it to help with the learning process here. So module 1, where to start, would be inventory your crypto wallets, exchanges, and cryptocurrency. And again, if you only have a couple of these, this might be like, what's he talking about? But I can tell you that at least the people we've worked with and what we've done in the space for the last 8 years, you'd be surprised. And when you go to inventory, that you come up with a really long list. And not only that, you don't get it all in the same shot. You might make a list, go take a shower. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that platform that I used, that was only around for like a year and stuff like that. So actually, creating the inventory of the different wallets and exchanges. And some of that could also be ICOs, because ICOs might be a one-off where you send from a wallet, to the ICO or IEO or whatever the current word is that people are using these days. So, but that's a one-off transaction that, is not going to show up necessarily as like as a trade, right, on an exchange. So that type of stuff, like document those important things. So really just creating that inventory, and then really having an Excel sheet. I hate to be off in Excel, doing anything as a one-off, but really you got to essentially create your own tracker, as I mentioned in some of the ways that you would use that, right? And then you got to round up your transactions, download, save, and back all that stuff up in the perm file. And again, even if you think you're not going to use these reports, you should download every single report that's available. And for example, when you have APIs with some of the exchanges, those are only pulling in trades, by the way. They're not pulling in They're not pulling in deposits, they're not pulling in withdrawals. And many of these exchanges, you're downloading trades as one report, withdrawals is another report, deposits is another report. Now, again, if those deposits and withdrawals are all transfers back and forth in between exchanges, transfers are not taxable, but really you should have all those transactions, because in theory, with accounting, you want each and every single transaction. Every transaction is what you want to account for, especially for a business. All right. With an individual, it might not be so important, but a lot of these crypto tax software platforms have kind of gone with the premise that, well, transfers are not taxable, so therefore they're not important. And I would actually argue the opposite assertion. Transfers are not taxable, however, they are the most important transaction of all, because all transfers come in pairs, right? They're mirror images of each other. And if you have all your transfers and you match them all up, then you can exclude those as not being anything else. Once they're matched up, transfers are done. Let's say put them to the side. You can exclude those to any of those being income, being a trade, being an expense, whatever that is, like that. And again, like I said, cover your ass. And that's best practice. What I found is that this is in general, but also with crypto, with these files, you're going to end up having to do some manual importing and some manual manipulation of some platform somewhere along the way. And so when you save the files, you got to rename the files. All right. That's the thing, because what I find is people generally are really poor at naming files, whether it's in the, let's call it the fiat legacy universe or the crypto universe. No matter what it is, I found that people are really kind of do a poor job of naming files. And if you end up with a whole bunch of different iterations of files, and if you don't name them well, you're going to be buried in a sea of files, not know which one is for what, and so on and so forth. And by the way, while I'm thinking of it here, before I forget, what I realized is that I'm sure you all are familiar with the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and that applies to crypto taxes. Big time. Basically the concept of the Pareto principle is it applies to everything in life. And once again, it applies to crypto taxes. So what that means, if you think about it in sales, right? 80% of the sales come from 20% of the work. The remaining 20% of the sales come from 80% of the work. Same thing applies to crypto taxes. 80% of the transactions you can get into your software with 20% of the work, but you're left with the remaining 20% of your transactions takes 80% of the work. And rather than 80-20, it might be a 90-10. So you might get 90% of your transactions in with 10% of the work, and the remaining 10% of your transactions takes 90% of the work. Like I said, eventually somewhere you're going to have some wallet that's not supported with your tax software. You're going to have to reformat it into their template format, and then try to import from there. Okay, so that's why when you do that, you're going to end up with all kinds of file iterations. And if you don't name those, you'll be buried in a sea of like, oh, where was that? Especially if you put it down and come back to it even a day or two later and you didn't name the file. Always put a date. Every file should have a date, the date that you dealt with it, the date that you created it. That's probably the number one best troubleshooting tools of anything. Even a date that you created an exchange account, documenting that. You'd be surprised at how valuable that one date is, knowing information like that. Of course, choosing the right crypto tax software is another one. So, there's some software that have dozens, if not, even hundreds of exchanges and wallets that are supported. Others only have a few. Now, if you have an ETH account, Bitcoin, ETH address, Bitcoin address, etc., then, if you've used accounts like that, then you really need software where you can import those transactions. So there's still some platforms out there today that are very popular, but you can't plop in a Bitcoin address, you can't plop in an ETH address and have those transactions, be imported into that software. And that could be a really big deal. So like, trying to reformat ETH transactions based on an import template, you could be buried doing that when it doesn't even make sense to have been doing that in the first place. You should have been using a platform that actually supported that type of import. You see what I'm saying? So really choosing the best crypto tax software, which is actually something we're working on, is like a guide to figure out how to pick that if you haven't already done that. But even if you have been using one for years, you know, especially one of the earlier ones, you may be looking at something now where you've outgrown it. Okay. And then you got to migrate. That's a whole nother issue, especially if you're doing DeFi stuff right now, you know, and having a software that's going to be able to handle that. So yeah, there's a whole world in just choosing the right crypto software. And you could even have a particular exchange or particular wallet, again, where most of your, they say 80% of your transactions were in some wallet. There might be 2 software platforms that even support that. Okay, so those might be your candidates then, your leading candidates when you're trying to like shorten up the list, right? Which ones to choose. So let's see. Imports, uploads, linking, exchanges, wallets, freeform. Yeah, I guess we kind of talked about that. We talked about troubleshooting earlier. Okay, we kind of beat that one up pretty good. But again, you might do a calculation and have no warnings from the software, but that doesn't mean you don't have some type of issue buried. So one of the most important things, I didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the most important things for troubleshooting is once you get all your transactions and you think you've got everything covered, okay, you got everything's complete, do a calculation. The software should give you some ending balance. Okay. Now the question is whether they give you an ending balance that's current, or they're giving you an ending balance where you can choose the date. There's still limitations on that. You may not be able to pick, oh, I want to go back in time to this date to see what the balances are. You may not be able to do that. Okay. But nonetheless, what you want to do is you want to compare the ending balance in the software to your actual ending balance that you have on hand. You know, whether it's in total for Bitcoin or it's in a particular wallet for Bitcoin. And you want to compare those and see if they're close. Because if it's way off, then that means you got an issue. So this is why accounting for businesses, and we do work with individuals as well, but you know, our wheelhouse is also working with businesses, and a crypto business is like 5 or 10 times more complicated than individual crypto tax, and also way more complicated than a fiat, you know, business. And so, because why is that? Well, with a business, you have to have a balance sheet, you have to have an income statement. Those things are interlocked. They all have to balance. See, individuals aren't required to have a balance sheet. So therefore, most software that's out there is retail software for the consumer. And it may give you show you ending balances, but it's not an accounting system, so to speak. It's more of a tax calculation system. Now there's actually some software that's out there that's focused just on enterprise, and there's a handful of those. So if you're a business, then you need to really have the software that can manage this stuff from a business level. And I can tell you that the cost, even though the cost of the consumer stuff is all over the board, from say $50 a year to could be several $100s for a year for a seat, if you will, or a license for the year. I can tell you that the business stuff is in the range of $250-ish plus or minus one user per month. So you're talking about $3,000 a year for one user for software to handle this, to be able to create an accurate balance sheet and calculate these taxes from a business perspective. But see, consumers, again, individuals don't have to produce a balance sheet. So to some degree, it may be even more of a challenge to try to use this software to do this troubleshooting. But again, you want to calculate everything, and one of the ways you know it's accurate, if you want to check your ending balances, they should match up to what you have. You go check all your wallets and everything, and you want to, now the chances of it being perfect are probably small, because there's going to be fee issues, there's going to be this and that. So if you're reasonably close, you should give yourself a high five. If you're super close, consider that perfect, a perfect match if you're close. But if it's way off, you got some more work to do, and something's gotten missed somewhere, something's gotten miscoded, and you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. All right. So that's the key thing, is when you get near the end, after you get everything in there and you do your calculations, compare those ending balances, because that's a key troubleshooting tool. Using cost basis methods, again, it depends on what jurisdiction, that you can, which method is considered acceptable in your jurisdiction. That one thing alone can have a big difference in the outcome of your taxes. Basically, in the US, FIFO is the default, but you can also use specific identification, which means, similar to stocks in the US, you can identify to your broker ahead of time, hey, I want to sell this particular lot, like that. Now, it doesn't work that way in crypto. You don't identify it with an exchange ahead of time. it doesn't work that way. It's not exactly the same, right? So the software is kind of approximating what specific identification would look like. It's not a really a perfect specific idea, but I think eventually we're going to have some really cool, sophisticated tools that are going to come out, along the way. We got some good stuff emerging, but there's going to be some really awesome tools that are going to allow you to do, because we need it to really to manage this crypto stuff from a tax perspective and everything else. Completing the tax calculation for reporting, the attachment itself is that's a whole different thing right there. You could, in the US, you're required to attach basically all your transactions. Some people could they could be a ream of paper, essentially. Not that you would submit it that way, but, they could you could have a 300-page attachment or whatever. So again, does the software allow you to condense some of these things? Because you could have trades on the same day that you could potentially see. When you submit a trade, by the time it gets filled, the bigger it is, it might be 15 transactions to fill the order, even though it was one trade. So it might make it look like you're trading all over the place when really you're not. It's just the fact that that's how the trade got executed on the backside. Even though you only submitted one trade, it just took 15 trades to fill it. So anyway, I guess that's it. I know we want to have some questions and stuff. So that's just trying to give you some best practices and thoughts and things to consider there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kirk. I know while you were speaking, you gave the examples of the IRS asking Coinbase for the information of its users, and the CRA on this side just asked one of Canada's largest exchange for the same thing. They have up until April the 6th to provide. I think it's 20,000 starting from anybody with trading transaction of 20,000 starting from 2014 till 2020. So that's a big window. And being in the space for that long, I know a lot of quote unquote whales that have made money that were trading on all these exchanges, all of a sudden are going to be hit if you're trading on CoinSquare or even the defunct Quadriga. You don't have any data. So, I mean, you brought light to a lot of things that I wasn't even thinking about. And I know a few of the founders of Bitcoin Bay, we've done a lot of transactions on exchanges. And now we have to go back and see what the impact will be for our own personal as well as the business side of our business. Now, Gaurav, do we have any questions in the chat, or have we answered all of them?
Based on what I can see, I think most of the questions are coming in the chat and people are answering them. Yeah, it's just been a lot of back and forth in the chat, but if there's anyone who wants to ask a question over voice towards,
I have a question.
Yeah.
So hi, this is Crypto Ed. So I have a question about like secondary citizenships. This is a trend I've been noticing with some of the whales at my local crypto club. I don't know that is this like a legitimate thing, or is this something that they just do to show off? But I've been hearing that some of the whales they are applying for like a secondary citizenship, and then they use this secondary citizenship as the KYC. Some of them claim that they pay less taxes on that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And is this something that is worth pursuing, or does it even make sense?
I was actually going to comment. That was one of the comments I was looking at that I wanted to chime in on there. So yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot to unpack there. You could probably have a whole talk just on that. So getting a notice of citizenship. Well, first of all, if you're a U.S. citizen, getting another citizenship is very, very challenging. All right. So I'm sure somebody could be an expert and their whole wheelhouse could be just on citizenship and, second passports and stuff like that. So some countries, it can be rather challenging and take a long time. When you say citizenship, it could be, I'm talking about the level of actually having a passport, because you could be a resident, but that's different from you could be a tax resident and so forth. That's different from being a citizen. So you got to there's other distinctions to make here. But with that being said, so whether you are actually have a second citizenship or not, you could actually live in another country and be a tax resident and not necessarily be officially a citizen and be subject to tax in both, both regimes. So when the U.S. is rather unique in the sense that you are taxed on all sources. You're taxed on income from whatever source derived. So that means they want to rope in all tax, whether the tax originated in the U.S. or whether the tax originated elsewhere. They want to. It's like a funnel. Everything funnels down into the U.S. if you're a U.S. taxpayer. Okay. Now, with that being said, so that means most folks have to, even if they live somewhere else in another country, U.S. folks, they still have to file a U.S. tax return, but they'd also have to file a tax return in the other country, or could be more than one country. But let's just say it's another country, Spain, for example. So you file 2 different tax returns. And this could be true for other countries as well. I'm just using U.S. and Spain as an example. You file multiple tax returns, but often what you'll do is you'll get a credit for taxes paid to the other country. Okay. Like in the U.S., you pay taxes in Spain, you get a foreign tax credit for that. It could offset and essentially make the taxes as if it was, the effective tax. If you only paid it in the U.S., it's not going to be necessarily exactly the same, but the tax credit allows you to make that whole. I think there was another comment around that had to do with how the gains will be taxed. The thing is that, again, now you're talking about different regimes with just the crypto tax piece of it, how you would calculate that. So and just all the things we were talking about crypto tax software, you might need to produce one report for the US, one report for the Canada, another report for Spain. We've seen that before. And also, you might then have to change the local currency as well, right? So, and again, I don't know that these softwares aren't designed with that kind of complexity in mind. I mean, you can do it, but sometimes you got to switch transactions back and forth. So, for example, charitable contributions in the U.S., you can make a charitable contribution of appreciated property, which could be crypto, right? So you want to contribute some ETH. You want to contribute $50,000 worth of ETH or $20,000 worth of ETH to your favorite charity that now accepts ETH, and you got a zero basis, so it would otherwise be 100% gain. Well, you can contribute that, $20,000 in ETH, for example, and deduct $20,000 as a charitable contribution against your taxes. All right. But like, let's say Spain or another country where it doesn't recognize the charity, because it has to be a specific type of charity, right? US, we call it 501c3, is tax deductible. But another country, it might have to be their version of that to be deductible in that country. So, for example, if you need to produce these 2 reports, then you have to go change the transaction where you made that charitable contribution and go tag it as, a spend, let's say, in the country where it would, where the charitable contribution, where you can't take that, you tag it as a spend, create a report there, go back, change the transaction back for the US. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes you get tripped up having to change transactions back and forth for specific nuances. And it's not just, and it could also be, again, changing the home currency as well. You might have to change it to euros, run a report, change it to dollars, run another report. So these different countries, just on the crypto side, creates another level of complexity there as well.
Okay, good questions. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, so what do you see happening, especially with all these things happening in the space? Like you have DeFi, you have NFTs. How do you see the tax regime actually dealing with all these assets that are all of a sudden being produced by blockchain and crypto? Would they be treated the same way? Would they look at them differently? Or because I'm starting to consider or realize that they might classify them in the way that they traditionally classify other assets.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, there's a lot of these things that are happening that aren't fully analogous to the legacy financial system. Okay. So that could be, for example, interest and dividends. Well, we don't have interest in dividend. I mean, you could have interest if you're using a BlockFi or whatever, where they're paying you interest like that, but that's a more simple scenario. But now we got staking rewards that we didn't have that in the other world. Now we have that in the crypto universe. We got staking rewards. But DeFi is adding a whole nother level of complexity to this that I'm just telling you from like, I happen to be on the AICPA's virtual currency task force, by the way. So AICPA is like the largest trade group for CPAs in the world. And I've been on this task force. The point of the task force is to be a liaison and an advocate for tax practitioners and the IRS. Okay. So we've actually created white papers to the IRS saying we believe that, you know, this is the brain teaser. This is how we think it should be taxed, and so on. By the way, in the U.S., they had an initial. It was like a, what do they call it? I want to say a bulletin. It was a light. Let's call it a light paper. It was like a 2-page thing from 2014, and we had 5 years pass by, more than 5.5 years passed by before we got any new guidance, which was October of 19. Okay. 5.5 years. That's a huge span when people are like asking, please, just tell me how to do it. And then I'll do it that way. And again, I don't think this is unique to the US. There's a lot of, and so what I'm saying is like, we still have issues that I don't even think have gotten proper consideration or clarity. And now we got DeFi into the equation. So again, like chain split coins from forks, that still really hadn't been properly addressed in the US. Even though they did put out a rev proc, and I think they, you know, they say they've had it handled, but I don't believe that they fully, because they definitely haven't addressed airdrops, and that's actually probably, I don't want to say easier, but maybe the easier one to address relative to chain split coins, and they haven't even spoken on that one yet. You see what I'm saying? So here we don't have, let's say we don't have clear guidance on airdrops, and now we got DeFi, and now you got DeFi even more complicated than that, because you can take LP tokens. You know, and the question is, how is that taxed? You know, you telling me that you take 2 assets and you put them into a wrapper? It's like, to me, it's like putting them inside a Ziploc bag. You're going to tell me that's a taxable transaction because you put your ETH and your synthetics inside of a, you know, a Ziploc bag, and you made an LP token, and you're saying that's a fully taxable transaction. Again, going back to zero basis coins. So you had ETH with 0 basis, synthetics with 0 basis. If you create an LP token under that methodology, you create 100% gains when all you're doing is adding liquidity to a platform. So to me, that wouldn't match the economics of what you're doing at hand, which is simply providing liquidity. And again, we don't have any clarity on that. I'm asserting that that wouldn't be taxable, but you know, maybe it will be said that that is taxable. If that's the case, what you would do is you would only enter the LP position by buying the coins straight up in that moment before creating liquidity, if you follow me. So if I want to do ETH synthetic, using that example, I go buy the ETH, I go buy the synthetics, and then right after that, I provide the LP and create the token. Because that way my basis is exactly what I put it in for, rather than where somebody could say that's a sale. But see, you have the adjustment too, right? The assets are in there. One goes down, you always adjusting it to be in balance. So that little piece would be a sale. Every time one drops, you got to sell the other to readjust. That's these little sales that are happening. Plus you have fees that are being earned. But see, now you can take an LP and you can now take it to LP, and you can make a crypto bond out of it. You put the LP in, you put the bonding token in, and that's another level on top of that, you see? So this is getting more and more complex, and there's still platforms today where you'll see we're working on DeFi coming soon, you see? So some of them have some, so it's only going to get more complicated to deal with this stuff.
But wouldn't they look at the underlying process and go, okay, these are derivatives of derivatives, and how do we currently treat derivative products in an accounting scenario, and basically try to apply those kind of derivative logic, how we, in an accounting sense, to those kind of space? Because it's like a rabbit hole, right? And I know it's a headache whereby they have to think about inventing new concepts to actually apply to that space. We're all going to be waiting forever for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Gaurav, do you see anything there?
Currently not that I can see. In the chat, I think people are talking amongst each other. If anyone has a question, please post it up now or raise your hand.
Let me ask this then. So, which you touched on, but let's say some of us have been in the space for a while, since 2012, 2013, and actually even longer. And we've bought crypto, we've hodled, right? We've done certain transactions, and we haven't been able to keep proper records, like you've mentioned.
Yeah.
How should we start, or where should we start?
Well, like I said, the first thing to do is you make an inventory
Mhm.
of what you've actually used.
Mhm.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're separating the process from just trying to like go dive in and grab stuff,
Mhm.
data, like literally make a list. And I'm telling you that you'd be surprised, like, you know, you're going to make a list and you're going to realize that, oh yeah, there's like, you know, what was the one that was, I believe this one started in Canada. It was, what was that thing? A change tip. Remember that one?
Mhm. Yeah.
Change tip,
Yep.
Twitter tipping.
Yep. I remember that one. Yes.
So you could like change, that's just an example of another platform. You could have had Bitcoin bouncing around somewhere.
Mhm.
They really just need to make an inventory, including like ICOs and other things like that. I use this wallet, I use that, and then try to make a list, because that's your table of contents
Mhm.
you're going to work from. And then go gather the transactions. And then you're going to need to, again, put your transactions into the software. And then you need to get to the point where you see where the holes are, right? And once you know where the holes are, then you just got to figure out how to deal with it. And again, some of it might be, well, I just know that at that point in time, I had X Bitcoin at that point in time, and I had, you know, so what I'm saying is you can use your head
Mhm.
from your knowledge, and you just need, what I'm saying is write it down. Like, I know that I had this Bitcoin, I use this exchange, I use that. And because of that, I know that my basis in the Bitcoin, I bought it for like $300 or $1,000 or whatever. Like, just document that. So you can make estimates and stuff. Again, being reasonable and consistent, you know, acting in good faith.
Cool.
Just try to figure out where to, you know, and, you know, you might have something that's completely missing, but, you know, like I like to say, I just like to use that terminology. Like, how do you plug the hole?
Alwyn, any question? Because I know you've had some tax questions on and off. Do you have any questions, Alwyn? Is Alwyn there? I guess not.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but I see what Kirk is saying when he's trying to put forth situations where even the tax authorities don't know what to do. So I've had enough of experience in the past where I've even called up FinCEN in 2013, 2014, and asked them about certain situations I faced, and they said bluntly, we don't have a law. So I get it. I get the whole equation. And I understand where I see people trying their best to do this and do that. And I feel it's difficult for everybody, including the IRS, the SEC, the CRA, the OSC. Everybody's got problems because the technology is moving fast. And sometimes it's difficult for people to just keep up with the technology. And then when it comes to situations like taxes, it's complicated. So I don't really have any questions, as much as I sympathize with you, Kirk, to see how many complications. It's just to get compliant. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And
Well, maybe one other thing to throw in there, talking about a situation where you've got missing data. Like, think about this. So if you gather everything together, okay, you get what you can get, and you can't get what you can't get because it's not available. That's it. You've done the best possible job. You can't do any better than you could possibly do the best possible job for yourself. It's impossible to do any better than the best possible job. What I mean by that is, okay, if you take that and you give it to a taxing authority and they're dealing with the same information, how are they going to produce a better, more accurate result than you did? Because you have missing information. You see what I'm saying? Like, you get to some point where it is what it is, and there's the best that you can deal with. Now, you might have estimates maybe or something like that if you're dealing with that, but like, you know, it's just because, like, if a taxing authority can't make a magic wand and make information materialize if you don't have it. And by the way, one thing you could do too is if you got missing stuff, you know, like, I don't think you can access Poloniex right now, for example, or I know see people talking about Quadriga. I seriously doubt there's any information available directly, right? Maybe somebody's got access to a database, but the point is, if you make an inquiry and say, hey, you know, whatever you think the best support email is, or whatever the best support channel is, and you say, hey, I use this, I was an account holder on this exchange, this platform, and I need my transactional data from that. Can you please help me out? Like, you know, make the request. Now, you might get no response, or you might get a response that says, sorry, we can't help you because we don't have it. It's been purged. Or you might have a response, well, we can only give it back so far. Regardless of what the response is, again, PDF that email to the perm file. That's another thing you covered your ass. You did the due diligence to ask for it, and you couldn't get it. So you're showing all the evidence collectively together shows you're acting in good faith, you know, that you covered your ass.
Now, there's a question somebody asked, and it was, do you have people that do taxes for Canadians on your side?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually who, we always like to have, you know, a list of folks, whether it's attorneys in specialty areas or whatever, but actually really can't point anyone to that does specializes in Canadian tax returns.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I wish I had that, but I don't right now.
So just on our end, we do our Bitcoin base. So reach out to us, and again, we will get you the list as well. But again, crypto is international, global. So as long as we can all work our networks, we can all help each other with what we're experiencing. It doesn't matter where we are, and idea or knowledge sharing. Now, I guess we're coming a bit to 7:30, and a lot of people don't have any questions, and I don't want to use up too much of Kirk's time. So I'll open it up for another minute or two. If you don't have any questions, I'll have Kirk basically tell us all about how to reach him or how to follow him, if he's got any social media platform, his website again, and whatnot. And for all you entrepreneurs that are trying to start a business, that are trying to start a business in the US on the crypto base as well, I think you should reach out to him and get his input and see how he or his company can help you actually attack the US market that way as well for crypto.
Yeah, we've got LinkedIn is a good one.
Mhm.
Get me on LinkedIn, or also actually what I recommend is going to the website Crypto Blocko. I think you put that in the notes there, but that's where we're actually, that's like a primary site, even though we have another one. That's the one we're putting together for resources, really. And we have the Crypto Bullseye blog on there, so I'd suggest signing up for that, because we give out some great golden nuggets on a number of different topics there. So that's a good way to stay connected. But like I said, we're trying to, people are asking about crypto IRAs and stuff like that as far as the US. I don't know which, you know, sure they have something similar in Canada, but you know, that's a whole world unto itself. Like, how do you choose? What are the differences? How do you choose one? What are the considerations? What are the costs? So that's why we're putting together a resource on, here's the platforms we think are good ones to choose from. Here's the considerations and stuff like that. So, you know, whether it's that or software, hardware wallets. I know a lot of people have stuff on hardware wallets, but you know, and really, because really it's really about risk. That's, you know, kind of, we're in the business of risk, right?
Taxes
It's our
scares a lot
business.
of people, even people that are understanding it a little bit. It's a space that nobody wants to touch or nobody wants to play with, because it's just it's a scary place to be in. But again, I myself and the rest of the Bitcoin Bay team, thank you very much
Yeah, thank you
for
for having me.
for actually joining us, and you know, on a short notice, actually taking a reign of this and actually sharing your information with the rest of us. So I will reach out to you again, because I really would like to do this and actually go into more of what you're doing besides the taxes stuff. So please look out
thank you.
for email from me, so we can schedule something for the rest of the community to actually talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you name it, I've done it in the crypto space. So once you start talking about taxes, I think sometimes people might pigeonhole you mentally and think that's all you know about, but we have
Correct.
quite a breadth and depth.
Yep,
in the
correct.
space.
So again, thank you very much.
Yep.
Again, so I guess we'll end it here because nobody has any questions. If you have any questions, you can actually, as Kirk said, you can look them up on LinkedIn or go to the website. There's enough resources there that you can get the information or reach out to us, and we will also reach out to Kirk or whoever we know on your behalf, and whatnot. And the rest of the community is saying that they really appreciate it in the chat. And
Yeah.
believe
Thank
me,
you, everybody. I love to share, share the knowledge and pay it forward. It's my favorite topic. So
Thank you very much. All right,
Crypto-
everybody. Bye-bye.
see you guys.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.